Okay, so you're possibly looking at a divorce in Ontario, and suddenly you're hearing these terms thrown around like uncontested and contested.
Mm-hmm.
It can feel like learning a totally new language when you're already dealing with, well, a lot.
Absolutely. It's overwhelming for many people.
Exactly. So that's what we're diving into today. Our mission really is to cut through that confusion. We want to clearly map out the crucial differences between these two divorce paths.
Right.
Because understanding this isn't just trivia, it could genuinely save you significant time, money, and honestly, a lot of emotional pain.
Yeah, and we're basing this on insights from GTA Divorce. They aim to make family law in Ontario, a bit more accessible. So think of this as us pulling out the key takeaways for you.
Precisely. The goal for this deep dive is pretty straightforward but important.
Mm.
Break down uncontested versus contested divorce in Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
We want you to leave this knowing the pros and cons of each so you
Yeah,
can maybe see which way things might lean for you or just get a clearer picture overall.
makes sense.
So let's jump right in. Let's start with uncontested. What does that actually mean fundamentally?
Well, at its heart, an uncontested divorce in Ontario means you and your spouse, you agree on everything, like all the big issues.
Everything, like what specifically?
Yeah, everything's significant.
Mm.
So how you're dividing property, what the plan is for any kids, that means custody and child support and also spousal support, whether it's needed or not. Complete agreement.
Okay, so everyone's nodding along, basically. That sounds like it would definitely make things smoother. What are the big upsides then?
Oh, the advantages are pretty significant. First off, cost. It's generally way more cost effective.
Right, less fighting means fewer lawyer bills.
Exactly. Because you're aiming for a mutual agreement, you typically need less lawyer involvement.
Right.
You avoid those long, drawn-out court battles, which, get really expensive.
Hmm.
Think about it. Every argument needing a lawyer's time or a court appearance, that adds up fast.
Yeah.
Hundreds maybe per hour. Uncontested lets you bypass a lot of that.
So we're talking potentially serious savings.
Potentially, yes. Substantial savings are definitely possible.
Wow. Okay, that alone sounds like a massive relief. What else? Any other positive?
Time. It's usually much faster.
Faster. How so?
Well, without needing court dates for arguments and all the back and forth formal negotiation through lawyers, you can get to the resolution much quicker. The timeline to actually finalize the divorce can be significantly shorter.
And I guess a quicker finish has a big impact on how stressful it all is. For everyone.
Absolutely. That's a huge one. By agreeing up front, couples can really lower the emotional temperature of the whole process, not just for themselves, but importantly, for any kids involved.
Hmm.
The conflict in a contested divorce, it can create this chronic stress, right, affecting mental health, making it hard to move on. An uncontested path, while still difficult emotionally, it offers a clearer route to closure. Avoiding those prolonged fights makes a real difference.
Okay, yeah, that paints a very clear picture of uncontested. So let's flip the coin. What about contested divorce? What defines that?
Contested, like the name suggests, is when you and your spouse can't agree on one or more of those key things we just talked about.
So disagreement on property or kids or support. Even just one thing.
Even just one. If there's disagreement on property division, child custody, child support, or spousal support, and you can't resolve it yourselves, the court has to step in. And that's where things usually get more complicated.
Right, and I'm guessing complicated comes with some major downsides.
Yes, several big ones. The most immediate is usually the cost. It's higher, much higher often.
Because you both need lawyers fighting your corner.
Exactly. Each spouse typically gets their own lawyer to argue their case, and those legal fees stack up quickly. Plus, there are often more court fees and other related expenses involved.
Okay, so a bigger hit to the wallet.
Hmm.
What about the time frame? How long does contested take?
It can take a lot longer, depending on how many issues you disagree on, how complex they are, and just how far apart you are. A contested divorce could take many months, sometimes, honestly, years to get fully resolved through the courts.
Years. Wow. That sounds incredibly draining to live through.
It really can be, which leads straight to the next point. The increased emotional strain.
Yeah, I can imagine.
When you're fighting over things like your home, your kids, your finances, it's intensely emotional. It's stressful for everyone. People often say going through a contested divorce was like one of the hardest times of their lives. Affects sleep, work, everything.
Okay, so these are two very, very different roads. How does someone start figuring out which path they might be heading down? What should they be thinking about?
Well, the source material, GTA Divorce, points to a few really crucial things to reflect on. First, and maybe the biggest one, communication.
How well you can talk to each other.
Yeah. Can you and your spouse actually still communicate productively? Can you have conversations that might lead to agreements? If the answer is yes, uncontested becomes much more likely.
That makes total sense. Okay, what else should someone consider about their specific situation?
Think about your finances. How complex are they? Are your assets and debts pretty straightforward, easy to list out and value? If yes, then agreeing on division might be simpler, pointing towards uncontested. But if you have complicated investments, businesses, multiple properties, lots of intertwined debt, well, getting a fair division might need a more detailed legal process, maybe contested.
And children, of course, add another layer entirely.
Oh, absolutely. Can you two agree on custody, on parenting schedules, on child support amounts? And, crucially, can you do that keeping the child's best interests front and center?
Right.
If you can collaborate on those really important decisions about the kids, that's a strong sign you might manage an uncontested divorce. But big disagreements there often mean it's heading towards contested.
Okay. And spousal support. That seems like another potential flashpoint.
Definitely. Is there agreement on whether support should be paid at all? And if so, how much and for how long? Disagreements over entitlement or the details, yeah, those frequently push things into the contested category.
So it really sounds like so much depends on just finding common ground. Is there one thing underlying all of this?
I'd say willingness to compromise is key. It's fundamental, really.
Okay.
Are both of you actually open to negotiating? To maybe giving a little to get to an agreement on everything? If both people are willing to meet somewhere in the middle, not dig their heels in on every point, uncontested is much more doable.
But if one person just won't budge.
Then yeah, a contested divorce might be the only way forward to get things resolved.
Okay. So let's say someone's listened to all this, they've thought about their situation, and they're thinking, okay, uncontested feels like the right direction for us. What should they actually do first? What are the prep steps?
Right. The very first practical step is gather your financial documents, all of them.
Like what specifically? Bank stuff?
Yeah, bank statements, investment account details, RRSP or pension info, deeds for any property, your recent tax returns.
What?
Basically anything showing what you own and what you owe, individually and together.
Why is that so critical right at the start?
Because you need that full picture to have a fair discussion about dividing things up. It ensures transparency. You both know what's on the table.
Okay, got it. Get the paperwork sorted. What's next?
Then you need to work together, hopefully, to draft a separation agreement.
Ah, the formal agreement.
Exactly. This is the legal document. It spells out everything you've agreed on, property division, kids arrangement, support, everything.
How do people usually do that? Just write it themselves?
You could try, but it's complex legally. Often couples might use a mediator, a neutral third party, to help them talk it through and reach fair terms. Or sometimes, even in an uncontested situation, each person might hire their own lawyer just to help draft or review the agreement. Make sure it's solid, legally speaking, and protects their interests.
Okay, makes sense. And once that agreement is drafted and everyone's happy, signed it.
Once you have that signed, legally binding separation agreement, then you can move to file a joint application for divorce with the court. You submit the application along with the signed agreement and any other required forms.
That does sound much more straightforward, assuming you have that agreement.
It generally is, yes.
But what if you just can't get there? Agreement isn't happening. What are the first steps when you know it's going to be contested?
If you're facing a contested divorce, the absolute first, most vital step, get an experienced family lawyer. Now.
Don't wait.
Don't wait.
Yeah.
These cases get complex fast. You need someone knowledgeable in your corner, advocating for your rights, protecting your interests. It's really essential.
Okay, step one, lawyer up. What happens after that?
Then you, with your lawyer's help, start gathering evidence. You need proof to back up your side of things on whatever issues are in dispute.
Evidence like more financial stuff.
Financial documents again, yes, but also potentially things like emails, text messages, maybe photos, school records, witness statements. Anything that helps build your case on the points you disagree on.
Right. Documenting everything related to the disagreements. What's the next kind of formal stage then?
That's usually when you enter what's called the discovery process.
Discovery. Sounds like detective work.
Sort of. It's a formal legal process where both sides exchange information and evidence. It involves tools like, well, depositions, maybe.
What's that?
That's where you or your spouse might be questioned under oath by the other side's lawyer, and a transcript is made. There are also written questions called interrogatories you have to answer formally, again under oath, and requests to produce specific documents.
So it's about getting all the cards on the table, basically.
Exactly. Both sides gather all the relevant information to understand the other's case and build their own. It's about transparency before potentially going further.
That sounds pretty intense. Is there still a chance to settle things without a full trial, even after all that?
Oh, definitely. Yes. Even in contested cases, settling is often possible and, frankly, usually preferred over a trial.
How does that happen?
Your lawyer will likely try to negotiate with the other lawyer. Sometimes you might use mediation again, even at this stage. They work to find a compromise on the disputed issues that both sides can agree to.
If even that doesn't work, if you just can't settle.
If all the negotiation attempts fail, then yes, the final step is heading to trial.
Okay.
At that point, you work really closely with your lawyer to prepare everything, your evidence, your arguments, your witnesses, to present your case persuasively to a judge who will then make the final decisions.
Wow, so the bottom line really is agreement versus disagreement
Yeah.
totally dictates how this whole thing unfolds.
Precisely. That's the core difference. Can you agree on everything? If yes, you're likely on the uncontested track, less complex, less costly, usually less stressful. If no, then the court system steps in to resolve the disputes, and that's the contested path.
So for someone listening, maybe trying to figure this out, what's the key takeaway message for them right now?
I think it's crucial to really honestly look at your specific situation. Assess those factors we talked about: communication, financial complexity, ability to agree on kids, and support. Make an informed choice, or at least an informed assessment about which path seems more likely or even just possible for you. That self-awareness is really important.
And no matter which way it looks like it's heading.
Regardless, whether you think it'll be uncontested or you know it's contested, getting advice from an experienced family lawyer is almost always a smart move.
Yeah.
They can give you advice tailored just for you, help make sure your rights are protected, and work towards a fair outcome, whatever path you're on. And, like our source GTA Divorce points out, what we've talked about is general info, not legal advice.
Right, absolutely. Critical point. Always talk to a qualified lawyer about your own unique circumstances.
Exactly.
Okay, so thinking about everything we've covered, here's maybe a final thought for you listening. Based on all this, what do you think is the single biggest factor in your situation, or in a hypothetical one, that would probably determine if it's leaning uncontested or contested? It really seems to boil down to communication and that willingness to compromise, doesn't it? Definitely something to mull over.